There's a lake in the middle of one of the driest deserts on Earth that shouldn't exist. For years, sometimes decades, it's just gone. Dry. Cracked. Nothing but white salt stretching to the horizon. So flat and empty that pilots have used it as a runway. Then, without warning, water starts appearing. Slowly at first, then faster. Until an entire lake, sometimes bigger than some countries, rises out of the driest place on the continent, turning dead desert into one of the most spectacular ecosystems on the planet, filled with a million birds that seem to appear from nowhere the second the water shows up. And then, just as strangely as it arrived, it disappears again, sometimes taking years, sometimes only months, leaving behind nothing but dry ground, waiting silently for the next time it decides to come back. Nobody can predict exactly when that will be, not with certainty, not even today. This isn't science fiction. This is a real lake, in a real desert, doing something that still amazes scientists who've studied it for decades. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why this place proves nature can hide entire miracles beneath the driest, most lifeless-looking ground on Earth. Now here's the part that's going to feel a little too familiar. Think about a part of yourself or your life that felt completely dried up, burnt out, empty. A relationship that went quiet for so long, you assumed it was over for good. A dream you buried because nothing about it seemed to be happening anymore. A version of yourself that used to feel alive, but got buried under years of just nothing. And then out of nowhere, something shifted. Slowly at first. Barely noticeable. And then all at once, it came back to life in a way you didn't think was possible anymore. That's exactly what happens in this desert. It's called Kadi Thenda Lake Ayr, sitting in the middle of the Australian outback, in one of the harshest, driest regions on the entire continent. For most of its existence, it's a dead, white, salt-crusted basin. The lowest point in Australia. A place where temperatures soar, where nothing grows, where the ground cracks into patterns that look more like the surface of another planet than anything on Earth. But every so often, this dead place doesn't just get a little rain. It floods. Completely. And when that happens, something extraordinary is triggered. So what actually causes a desert this dry to suddenly fill with water? Where does that much water even come from, in the middle of one of the most arid places on the planet? And how does an entire ecosystem, birds, fish, algae, plant life, seem to appear almost instantly? Like it was just waiting underground the whole time for its moment? Let's go deeper, because the answer involves one of the most incredible survival stories in the natural world. The water that fills Lake Ayr doesn't come from local rain. It comes from monsoon rains falling hundreds, sometimes over 1,000 kilometers away, in tropical northern Australia. That water flows slowly over weeks, sometimes months, through a massive network of rivers and channels across the outback, gradually making its way toward this single low point in the landscape. By the time it finally arrives, the flood can be so massive it transforms Lake Ayr into the largest lake in Australia, sometimes stretching over 9,000 square kilometers of open water in a place that looked like the surface of Mars just months earlier. And the moment that water arrives, dormant life buried in that dry, cracked earth suddenly activates. Fish eggs and crustacean eggs, some of them capable of surviving years, even decades, buried in dry salt and mud, waiting in a kind of biological pause button, suddenly hatch. Algae blooms almost overnight. And within days, hundreds of thousands, sometimes over 1 million waterbirds, pelicans, banded stilts, silver gulls, arrive from thousands of kilometers away, seemingly out of nowhere, to breed in a lake that didn't exist a few weeks earlier. Scientists still don't fully understand how birds know, sometimes within days, that a lake hundreds of kilometers away has suddenly filled with water. Somehow, across an entire continent, the signal spreads and life responds immediately. But here's the twist that makes this story even more incredible. This flooding doesn't happen on a predictable schedule. Some fillings happen every few years. But full, spectacular floods, the kind that turned this desert into Australia's biggest lake, might only happen 3 or 4 times in an entire century. In 1974, the lake completely filled for the first time in decades, one of the largest flood events ever recorded there. Then it dried up again. And people who had never seen it full assumed it might be another lifetime before it happened again. And that unpredictability is exactly what makes every filling event feel like a miracle rather than a routine. Nobody schedules a trip to see it because nobody truly knows when it's coming. Scientists monitor rainfall patterns and river systems constantly, trying to predict the signs. But this lake operates on its own timeline. It waits, sometimes for years. And when the moment finally comes, it doesn't ease into existence quietly. It floods almost the entire basin, exploding into color, movement, and sound, transforming the emptiest place in the country into one of its most breathtaking natural events, before slowly draining away again, back into silence, back into waiting. That's the real dopamine spike in this story. It's not just a lake that appears in the desert. It's proof that some of the most dead-looking places on Earth are secretly holding on to dormant life, patiently waiting, sometimes for years, for exactly the right conditions to return. Life doesn't always disappear when things go quiet. Sometimes it's just paused, buried, waiting underground for its moment. Right now, Keritanda Lake air might be dry. It might be filling. Nobody watching from a distance can say for certain which stage it's in without checking. But either way, buried beneath that cracked white salt, dormant life is still there, patient, resilient, ready to explode back into color the second the right conditions finally arrive. Maybe that's the real lesson hiding in this desert. The driest, most lifeless-looking seasons in our own lives don't always mean something is gone for good. Sometimes it just means it's waiting, quietly, patiently, for its own kind of flood. If this pulled you in, hit subscribe, because this planet is full of places that look completely dead on the surface, and are secretly holding on to something extraordinary underneath.